Let's dive into the growth assets portfolio and just talk about really how to interpret what we've put together and how to get the most value from it. So, just as a recap, these are digital assets, virtual real estate, and blockchain projects in general that really we see as being an asymmetric bet on the future. There might not be instantly actionable stuff that you can do today that's going to drive traffic, acquire customers, that kind of thing. Instead, think of it as being able to potentially own a piece of quote unquote Netflix in 5 years, right? So these virtual experiences, RPG games, augmented reality platforms, that kind of stuff. If any of these go to a mainstream level of adoption, then owning a scarce and finite section of it is going to be like buying, an acre of New York in the early 1800s. So, I mean, the opportunity is insane if it pans out, but also these are highly speculative. So it could very well just go to zero, and you have to be aware of that before you go into this stuff and before you start looking at how to quote unquote buy your land, right? So again, in the broader sense, we're not just thinking about sort of the investment side of it. And again, this is not financial advice. Everything here is just our opinion. There is some investment aspect to this, but it's more about thinking about how can you secure potentially a decades-long growth asset or distribution channel by kind of like co-owning part of what might become a social network, so to speak. I mean, we're increasingly seeing social networks like Facebook get really serious about metaverse projects. I think they see where this is going. They see that most kids these days are interacting largely inside of games like Fortnite and so on. They see that as kind of like the social networks of Web 3.0. And with blockchain-based projects, the users can own parts of these networks, own them outright. So, I mean, this is kind of a substantial opportunity if any of these things pan out. We've gone through kind of the existing universe, and we go through this every, all the time, but we'll add to this every few weeks. And we're looking at kind of what the most promising projects are that you can get involved with kind of right now. We'll look at what's on our watch list, and we'll go through this in a second, as well as the general competitive landscape to kind of see what else is out there and sort of just contextually understanding what success looks like in the centralized space, so you can kind of get you can benchmark that against the potential of what's happening in the decentralized or blockchain space. Okay, so first of all, we have our select portfolio, and these are our current top picks. So this is what we really have a lot of conviction in, and these are the things that we think are worth really looking at, because again, it's asymmetric, but if any of these work out and you're a part of it, it could really work out well. So what you want to do is just start by reading the brief. So just click on read the brief for any of these. It's going to open up the specific breakdown in the members area and go through our thoughts on it. So the opportunity, the setup, the timing, actionable strategies, key risks, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's important. And then how we've organized the database is as follows. We've got the platform, the brief, the asset class. So this tells us, so VRE is virtual real estate, and then in brackets we have we have the chain, so Ethereum. NFT is non-fungible tokens. These are all on Ethereum. Okay, we have the business model. So in this case, mini games, renting out your land, and advertising down the road. We have the estimated traffic of the project. So we use SimilarWeb usually for that. Same with the growth rate, and some of these are just growing on a tear. Project status. So, this is where we look at whether something is actually live or if it's quasi live for a few people, for a few users, whether it's in development, meaning no one can see it yet, that kind of thing. We look at capital requirements. So this is kind of like the floor cost, what it costs to, say, buy land or start interacting with the platform. We look at our speculation levels. So these are all going to be pretty high. But also our conviction level, meaning, just like a stock portfolio, thinking about what are we willing to hold through the downturns? What are we least likely to quote unquote sell or give up on? And then the sentiment level tracks other people's apparent thoughts on it. So we look at mentions in social channels. We look at, digging into the communities on Discord or Reddit. How are users kind of feeling about the project right now? We kind of summarize that. We get a sense of it. This is very subjective, but in general, it's kind of like what we see about that. On the watch list, we don't have briefs for watch list items. Just there's too many of them, and a lot of them are more contextual. But we summarize them right here in the database, as well as the business model. So we go through the platform, asset class, the business model, a summary, and then the project status. So read through all these, have a look at them. The summary also kind of highlights why it's on the watch list and not yet in the select portfolio. But these are all well worth tracking and keeping an eye on. For the most part, it's just because they're early, and we have yet to see kind of how it's going to take shape. And then the competitive landscape. Similar to the watch list, these are projects that either are not decentralized or not part of a blockchain infrastructure, but it's just good to know about. So in the overall space, in the overall approach with this interest in growth assets, it's helpful to understand why things like Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite are so pivotal to understanding why this is an important shift in how people use the internet, how they're interacting online, that kind of thing. So it's worth going through this just to give yourself a broader sense of the overall strategy and the overall approach to thinking about this as really a bet on the future for your business. Definitely, though, just in summary, read these briefs, go through them in depth. If you run into any questions, or if you want to just sort of riff some ideas, come join us in the Insiders Mastermind in the private Facebook group. You can learn about that right in our, where is it? In the members area, just go to Start Here, and all the instructions are there. Okay? So that's a little bit about how the growth assets portfolio is constructed, the thinking that goes into it, how to get the most out of it. But again, in summary, these are very speculative, but also really compelling. And just keep an open mind, go into it with that, read the briefs, and take a look at, thinking several years out, what small input today might turn out to be a huge outcome down the road. Okay.